All right, are we missing Mr. Scheck? All right, back on the record in the Simpson matter, all counsel are again present. Counsel, is there something we need to discuss about the testing protocol?
Your Honor, I
Other matters?
don't know what your timing is, but I think that it's complicated, and I don't know if you would want to do it right now. I don't know if there's any.
Well, is time of the essence since we have a witness on the stand, or is there something we can do once we...
I think we can take this up later.
Yeah. It's going to take a while to discuss.
May Marcia and I have a moment with these gentlemen.
resolve this?
I could. With this witness, we're going to need a certain list of items of evidence. I do not know whether they are included in the list that the defense now wants to take for further testing. And I understand that they have some long-range plans. I don't know what they are. So why? Well, but 1:30 is...
I think what needs to happen, Your Honor, is that counsel are going to need to talk to Your Honor in chambers at some point. And so we can continue the evidence, and we can do it either at lunchtime or have the jury come back a little bit later this afternoon. We can save some time by speaking with you and work this issue out. But it has to have, you need to carve out some time, I think, for it.
It won't be resolved in 15 minutes, I don't think.
You want to tell me specifically what it is we're talking about at this point?
I've been as specific as I can be. It's really the defense that has not put into writing yet what items they are about to request.
Should we approach the
So-
bench, or do you want...
Why don't you just tell me right now?
Yeah, I think that there's issues with respect to items that we have examined already that I anticipate they would be putting into evidence soon because observations were made, different pieces of trace evidence were secured from those items and segregated since we weren't allowed to test anything, but just examine it for further comparison and potentially testing. Then there's the logistics of working out arrangements to examine other items that the prosecution is anticipating put into evidence. And as the court knows, that's a longer discussion. My suggestion is that we probably could deal with this in chambers at the end of the day, because it again is going to involve what the prosecution intends to introduce and when they intend to introduce it, so that we can look at it before they do that, where that would take place, when that would take place, and what the timing of it is.
All right, Ms. Clark, then can you proceed with your direct examination with Detective Lange for the remainder of the morning without any need to address any of these issues?
Yes, I believe I can, Your Honor. I do want to have the opportunity to fully address the court concerning this most recent request by the defense. I don't know how many times they want to look at all of this evidence, and at the 11th hour, as they have, my understanding that everything has been examined by them, and so we come to a
Well,
point...
the agreement was that they could examine it but not test it. That was the agreement over the weekend.
Mm-hmm. But we keep sending evidence out, and, I mean, throwing it all over the
All right, well,
country, this is not...
Let me ask you, Ms. Clark, will you be able to proceed and conclude the court day this afternoon without any difficulties regarding the presentation of the physical evidence?
That I don't know. That's the problem. If I could assure the court of that, I wouldn't take time to do this now.
All right, let's do this then. Let's conclude the morning session. Over the lunch hour, I'll ask counsel to confer. When we come back at 1:30, if there's anything that needs to be resolved, we'll take it up at that point.
Okay.
All right. And if I could ask Mr. Scheck, Mr. Blazer, Mr. Clark, and Mr. Harmon, if you could, and Mr. Hodgman and Mr. Yokelson, perhaps if you gentlemen could confer while court is in session with the jury on other matters, perhaps we can narrow down the areas of inquiry. I see nods. All right. All right, let's have the jury, please. Ladies and gentlemen, be seated. Let the record reflect we've now been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Detective Tom Lange is still on the witness stand on direct examination. Good morning again, Detective Lange. You're reminded that you are still under oath.
Yes, Your
and
Honor.
Ms. Clark, you may continue with your direct examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Detective Lange, I believe you indicated that you just made contact with Cato Kalin, and that someone had asked who he was, and he gave his identity, his name to you.
Yes, that was Detective Furman that was speaking with Kalin.
Now, at that time, did any of you ask him where the defendant was?
I believe Phillips asked something to that effect. And Cato didn't really have a response. He really didn't know. Didn't appear to know.
Did Cato ask you why you were there?
I don't recall him asking.
Did you tell him why you were there?
No.
Why not?
I didn't know who Kalin was. The other detectives didn't know who he was. He was not a family member. We just didn't have him identified properly. We knew his name, but we didn't have him identified.
And so not having had him identified, why would you not want to tell him why you were there?
He's a possible suspect.
What happened next?
Furman spoke with Kalin and asked him if he was wearing, where the shoes were he was wearing last night, something to that effect, if he could look at them. And Kalin stated something to the effect that he didn't have a problem with that. At that time, I believe it was Phillips who asked if there was anyone else in the area, and Kalin stated that Arnell was next door, indicating that that was Mr. Simpson's daughter.
So Cato let Detective Furman look at his shoes?
Yes.
And so did Detective Furman step into the room with Mr. Kalin?
Yes.
At that point, what did the three of you do?
I was still out on the walkway. Phillips proceeded down the walkway to the next room over, and I was behind him. And Phillips had knocked on that door. And a short time later, Arnell Simpson appeared.
Now, during that time, Detective Furman was where?
He was in Kalin's room.
And was there a conversation that took place between Arnell Simpson and one of the detectives?
Yes, I believe initially with Phillips, and then Van Adder shortly after.
All right, now at that point, did Arnell Simpson ask you any questions?
Yes, she wanted to know what we were doing there, if there was any problems. She seemed to me to be concerned because of our presence.
Okay. Did Detective Van Adder ask her any questions?
Yes.
What was that?
Asked if her father, Mr. Simpson, was inside the house.
And what was her response?
Something to the effect of, "Isn't he here?"
She asked him,
Yes.
Isn't he here?
Yes.
And then what happened next?
We moved towards the rear after asking Arnell if she had a key to the location. She said she did. I believe she returned to her room briefly and got the key and came back out. We then proceeded to the rear door of the residence where she unlocked the door and we entered.
Now, did you tell her at that point why you were there?
Not at that point.
Why not?
Well, we didn't really know what we had at that point. I think it was important for her to maintain herself emotionally before we told her anything, because we may need her cooperation at a future time.
What do you mean? What do you mean? Need her cooperation at a future time?
Well, we didn't want her to. We wanted her to have it together enough to talk to us regarding the whereabouts of her father. Certainly, we didn't know if he was a victim, and I felt by telling her that her ex-stepmother was now deceased might be a real problem with her, when in fact we did know the whereabouts of Mr. Simpson at that time.
And what did you think she could assist you with if you wanted to maintain her calm and cooperative? What did you think she would help you with?
Locating her father.
Anything else?
Basically, in locating her father and other relatives, if need be.
By the way, were you aware that there were two small children being held at the West LA Police Station?
Yes.
And did you think she might help you in that regard?
Sustained.
Were you concerned about the welfare of those children?
Certainly.
Did you have any thought about who might help you with them?
Overruled.
Certainly, I felt that Arnell Simpson or someone she knew could help us with that, yes.
All right. When you got into the house with her, did you ask a question of her?
I asked if there was a housekeeper on the premises,
Why'd you ask that?
because we had information that there was in fact a housekeeper on the premises, or should have been a housekeeper on the premises, and I wanted to know.
Were you concerned for some reason in that regard?
I was concerned that the housekeeper may be some type of a victim. I didn't know.
What happened next? When you asked Arnell if there was a housekeeper on the premises?
She stated that she didn't know, but that there was a housekeeper.
She said she didn't know if there was a housekeeper?
She didn't know if there was one on the premises. I asked her where the housekeeper's room would be. She pointed out a location to the rear of the kitchen. And at some point I proceeded over there and walked into that room, the room that she stated belonged to the housekeeper.
Did you ask to see the room?
Yes, I asked where it was.
And was that the first room that you went to look into in the house?
No, I walked through the rear area, I guess the rear den area, and through a formal dining room, and through the kitchen, down a short hallway, and to the left of that was the housemaid's room.
Now, was Arnell leading you through the house?
She was with me, more or less in the front. Initially, when I asked the location of the housemaid room, she more or less walked in front of me and pointed out the way.
Did you then immediately go and look in the room?
Yes.
What did you see?
The bed was made, nothing looked disturbed, nothing looked out of place, and no housemaid.
No housemaid?
That's correct.
While you looked into the maid's bedroom, where was Arnell?
I believe Arnell was in the vicinity of the kitchen.
And was there someone with her?
Detective Phillips was there, and I believe Van Etter.
What happened next?
Detective Phillips was engaged in a conversation with Arnell regarding contacting, I believe, Mr. Simpson's secretary, Kathy Randa. And Arnell got a phone number for Kathy Randa and phoned her.
Now, during this period of time, sir, did you happen to see Cato Kalin?
Not at that particular time. I believe he was in the rear with firm in the rear of the residence.
What-
Oh, well,
When you say the rear of the residence, what do you mean?
In the vicinity of the bar.
And where was Detective Van Adder?
People were moving about quite a bit. I believe he was somewhere between the bar and the kitchen.
Now, while you were standing downstairs there, in the downstairs area, did you engage in a search of the location?
No.
Did you look around in any manner? Were you making any observations?
I looked around to see if anything might have been disturbed or if anyone was in need of anything.
Did you open closets,
No.
open drawers,
No.
look in shelves?
No.
Check under couches or under tables?
No.
What were you doing?
We were trying to contact Mr. Simpson. At that point, excuse me, we'd had information that he was probably out of town. After checking the maid's quarters, there didn't appear to be any problem in there, so I didn't feel that the maid was necessarily on the premises.
All right, did you ever go upstairs to look for the defendant?
No.
Why not?
Again, we'd received information the defendant was in Chicago.
Did you get that information shortly after you entered the house?
Yes.
All right, now, you said that a phone call was made by, what was it, by Arnell?
I believe Arnell phoned Kathy Randa, yes.
Okay. And after she made that phone call, what happened next?
I believe Detective Phillips then took the phone and had a conversation with Kathy Randa.
And what happened next?
He ascertained a location, which was Chicago, and I believe a phone number.
Now, at that time, did you see where Detective Van Adder went, or where he was?
Detective Van Adder, some of that time was back with Furman and Kalin near the bar area.
They appear to be having a conversation?
Yes.
At the point that Detective Phillips made the phone call to Chicago, what did you do?
I more or less walked with Arnell, attempted to escort her away from the phone out towards the sunroom in the front of the house.
Why?
I had determined at that point that I was going to tell her what had happened. She was very inquisitive and becoming more and more upset. I knew that Phillips was going to be talking to Mr. Simpson, explain to him what had happened. And I felt this was the time that I should make this notification about the death of Nicole Simpson.
So, did you notify Arnell Simpson?
Yes.
What happened next?
She became extremely upset. Extremely upset. She calmed down after a little bit to the point where she asked if she could call her dad's best friend and have him come over to the house, Mr. A.C. Cowlings. And if she could make that call to Mr. Cowlings from her room. And I stated yes, and go ahead and do that.
Did you ask her for any information, sir?
Not at that time, I don't believe.
Did you ever attempt to ascertain who other next of kin might be for Nicole Brown?
Subsequent to that, I did. I asked if she would have any names or telephone numbers and any relatives of Nicole Brown Simpson.
And when was that in relation to when she went to call A.C. Cowlings?
I may be mistaken. I think it might have been after or I don't recall, it was before, right around that area.
I'm
Right
sorry.
around that time. I don't recall. There were a lot of things going on. There were a lot of emotions, people moving in and out. I don't recall exactly when that was. It was just before she made the call to Cowlings or just after.
Okay, but right in that time, either just before or just after?
Within a matter of minutes, I believe, yes.
Okay. And so when you asked for some identification of some other next of kin for Nicole Brown, did she give you some information?
Yes, she stated that the Brown family, Nicole's family, resided in, I believe, Dana Point, and that she had a phone number.
And did
I'm sorry?
did you take it?
Yes.
Now, at that point, did you have any identification yet on the other victim at the crime scene, Ron Goldman?
No.
How far was Dana Point from where you were located at that time in Brentwood?
Dana Point was, in my estimation, probably at least 70, 80 miles away.
So what did you do?
I phoned the Brown residence
And for what purpose did you phone them?
to make a notification of the death of Nicole Simpson.
And what phone did you use to do that from?
I used the kitchen phone.
May I have a moment, Runner?
Yes.